Tennessee state officials authorized a $43 million infusion into Tennessee State University's operating budget in November to make payroll and prop up the university for the rest of the year. The funds come after the university laid off 114 people and cut expenses to cope with the financial crisis. TSU's new president acknowledged the university was about to go into the red on November 1st, even after it saved $11 million annually by letting go of the 114 staff members in October, and saved another $13 million by cutting spending, travel, and purchases. University officials also went to Washington, D.C. and met with Saudi Arabian officials at the consulate to request $7 million owed to TSU. TSU's previous Board of Trustees signed a contract to pay former President Glenda Glover at least $800,000 to serve as an advisor after she resigned on June 30th. TSU's finances have been in trouble for decades. In 2023, a federal report found that TSU had been underfunded by $2.1 billion over 30 years. A previous state study determined the university, one of two land-grant institutions in Tennessee, was shorted by $150 million to $540 million over a century. 2 years ago, lawmakers approved $250 million for improvements to the campus at the governor's request, but those funds cannot be used for housing. TSU is working on a separate dorm project. Remember, Tennessee lawmakers voted to dismantle TSU's Board of Trustees earlier this year. There's a board meeting on Thursday. We'll be following up with this and bring you any updates. But right now, I would like to bring in my panelists to start us off with tonight, Dr. Julianne Malveaux, economist and author based out of D.C. and former president of Bennett College. So look, I just needed to lean on your expertise. What the hell is going on in Tennessee?
First of all, the college has always been underfunded. The other land-grant university has gotten better funding than TSU has. So that's part of the story, is the persistent underfunding of HBCUs. Number two, it's specious to bring up Dr. Glover's exit package. She deserved it. She worked very hard. She did her very best. She got the university with a higher research status than it had when she came in. And so, to me, talking about how much money she gets or doesn't get it's hating. She's I think she was there for more than 10 years. She came shortly after I went to Bennett and stayed. She's just left. So an exit package is not unusual, and that's something that needs to be dealt with. She wasn't given a present. She was given an exit package. That happens. Number three, there is an increasing hostility toward HBCUs, an increasing hostility that suggests that we don't deserve to be treated as well as our PWI counterparts. And what that has tended to mean when you have hostile Republican legislatures is that they will come down on these universities and they will deal with them very harshly and inappropriately. So TSU is a great university, has a robust enrollment, has a graduate school, should be lifted up, but instead, because of politics, primarily politics, is being dragged down.
And so when you look at what's happening at TSU, do you look at it as, one, just no respect for HBCUs? Is it about we want this land? Is it a combination of everything? Is this added to the fact of, blame a black woman for everything? It doesn't seem like there's much conversation about what you're talking about in terms of historic challenges that have been with the government in Tennessee itself. And it seems like people are trying to paint it as we're kind of swooping in to save this university that just doesn't know how to manage itself. Seems like it's a lot bigger than that.
It's much bigger than that. It's BS to say that they didn't know how to manage themselves. They did the best. Glenda Glover did the best that she could with what she had. Again, persistent underfunding has to be something that's addressed. And yeah, there are always haters, and we know that. But also there's the envy of the land that we have and the record that we have. People always want to snatch our stuff. I'm a Congo, you and I have talked offline. I live this in terms of Bennett College. People, we could just have that. We could just have that. I live this. And unfortunately, I'm not as diplomatic as Dr. Glover is. So at a point in time, I was like, if you like it, then you could take a ring off it. But she's done a brilliant job, and she didn't create the financial situation. If the college had been properly funded from Front Street, they would not be here. If an audit is ever done to see what has happened, they would see what has happened in Tennessee in terms of TSU. Again, we live now in a cloud of anti-blackness. I dare say that maybe 10 years ago, there might have just been a transfer of funds without any conversation. But now anti-blackness is in the air. All of us live it every day. And in living that, what we're living is attack on Black education. Understand, if you look at Project 2025, they want to get rid of diversity. They want to get rid of the Department of Education. What they don't want is for our young people to understand what our roots are. They don't want us to read Claude McKay. If we must die, let it not be like hogs, haunted and pinned to this inglorious spot. They don't want young people to understand that there's a history of resistance and that HBCUs and Black people, indeed all of us, have been under attack since we got here. And so the TSU story is just a chapter in the story of how predominantly white institutions and white politicians attack Black people.
And given you, I'm so glad you mentioned the students, because that's what I wanted to come to next. Some people like to paint this as an issue of, well, this is at the higher levels, at the university, administrators levels, presidential levels, and the students are just going about their business. But I would assume that students are seeing what's going on. They know what's going on. And in many of our schools where enrollment has been up because people are looking at, our students are looking at these schools as safe spaces. Now they get there and they feel like they're being targeted for financial reasons as well. My assumption is that it also adds a certain level of insecurity for the students.
Oh, absolutely. When students see their colleges in trouble, it really raises their concern about what happens to me next year. It's when you have changes in the loan policies. I remember back in 2011 when Arne Duncan was Secretary of Education, and he changed the Parent Plus loan policy, which made it more difficult for parents to get loans for their students' education. It created a panic among young people because some of them, their parents had said, I'll pay this much if you pay that much. And if they couldn't get Parent Plus loans, it wasn't going to happen. People do not understand the enormous stress that many African-American students, especially those enrolled at HBCUs, and white students enrolled at HBCUs as well, feel when they feel like they're not sure that their money is going to come through. And it's palpable. You can feel it in the air. Students wondering, what's going to happen? What's going to happen to me? And so, you put a group of young people in a state of uncertainty. They're already young. They already have issues around finance. And then you throw something else that's like throwing, a match on a tinder block. I'll never forgive Arne Duncan for what he did. And they did have to roll some of it back. But basically, it created a climate of instability and fear.
Wow. I want to, I know also with your, economist esteemed background, this one part just really tripped me out. And the part, 2023, when they said that TSU had been underfunded by $2.1 billion over 30 years, but a previous study said that it was only shorted $150 million to $540 million over a century. I mean, the fact that a discrepancy of that large could be just all of a sudden uncovered a year ago, there's something else going on here.
Well, what's going on is that these state funded HBCUs have never treated the HBCUs on the same playing field as they've treated their PWIs. And especially when you look at the land grant colleges, they've never been treated in the same way. And so they have to work harder to make their case for why they should be funded. Their students are never funded at the same level that PWI students are funded. Ray Charles could see through that. Congo, you know that. Ray Charles could see through that. Or Stevie Wonder. Well, any one of our blind brothers is, what is the problem here? The problem here is Black self-determination. TSU has been a great university, done great work, produced great scholars, but it has been a university that has had to fight for every penny. If you look at the same area, look at Fisk University, which is a private, so they don't have public funding. They have been consistently dissed. Even when they did qualify for state funds, they didn't always get them. You know, lynching culture, don't let me get started today, but lynching culture says you could do whatever you want to do to Black people and basically have no consequences. And so part of that is the underfunding of our schools. The financial crisis is a crisis that was made by white supremacy. It's not a crisis of mismanagement. If you went back through and audited those books, you will not find mismanagement. You will not find profligate spending. What you will find is a very careful stewardship of the few funds that are available there. So I don't know what to say. When I read about this, I was just flabbergasted because Dr. Glover is a friend and a colleague, and I think she's done a brilliant job. But I think when she resigned because she'd had enough of white people and their nonsense. Had enough of a state governing board, which, when it tilted Republican, decided that TSU had assets that they could take. And so when you then turn this college into something that's a financial crisis, well, gee, we have to take it over. And we know about Tennessee. We know about the two young brothers there in the legislature, one of whom I believe is a TSU alum, who have stood up and said, challenging the State Board of Education, which has gone in there with a bunch of falsehoods, to attempt to take over some of those assets. Understand, if they didn't have any assets, or let me get real ghetto, if they had no assets, their would not be up in this. I'm trying to be clean. But there are valuable aspects to that university that some would like to take over. So we thank you, Roland, thank you, Congo, for lifting this up, because we got to fasten our seatbelts. The new president and his people want to eliminate the Department of Education, which is a source of funds for many of our HBCUs. So what are they saying and what are they doing? And this is a problem.
I want to bring in Eljoy Williams, a political strategist and host producer of Sunday Civics out of Brooklyn, New York. I'm such a fan of your work. Great. I'm such a fan of your work, I must say, to start with. And I want to get your take on, when you look at this, some people want to look at this HBCU situation, or this is just a school thing, this is just an education. But with the work that you do on Sunday Civics, is kind of what we've been talking about now. What are your thoughts on the fact when people just say, actually, if you realize this is all political?
Well, everything is political. As Dr. Malveaux has already mentioned, there are valuable assets that we have to pay attention to. Of why are people trying to take control over whether it's university space, whether it's our other institutions in our community, is to ask those questions. What is at stake? What do we lose? And what are people trying to gain for themselves? And so with anything, as you know, as a listener of the show, is getting to the root of what the issue is, who the decision makers are, is really important. And shining a light on these issues, because quite often these happen and we're talking about it after the fact. And so to really shine the light on it now as it is happening, for people to ask the questions and to be engaged and be involved in the process is really important.
And given the work that you do on these campuses and across the country as well, do you feel like there's going to be additional hostility towards what's happening? I mean, we've already looked at what's happening at TSU to be kind of hostile enough, but is it going to be increased given how so many people try to make HBCUs a kind of hub for political activism coming into this election? And now that we have Trump in office and everything that's going on that way, do you feel like the backlash is going to become more intense, the target is going to be more intense towards TSU?
Well, listen, I did a show a couple of weeks ago talking about the intense and political environment on college campuses in general. And certainly with HBCUs being a prime target, I do think that we should be hyper vigilant, not only about our education institutions like HBCU, but we've also seen just recently what tried to transpire in Congress. And so I think we need to be on high alert about our community institutions, whether they be education institutions, healthcare institutions, or even our general community nonprofits, which is something that I argued yesterday on the show to talk to people about. Take that disappointment that you may feel, that anger about what happened in the election, and double down into our communities. And there is an open invitation from community organizations, from education institutions, for people to come in and be a part of making sure that we have sustainable institutions in our community that are controlled by us, that we maintain because they are important to the structure of and the future of our community. And so everybody needs to go back and accept that open invitation to be engaged and involved so that we can maintain these institutions, which are vital to our work on a regular basis.
Absolutely. And Julian, given your experience at the college level, given your experience as an economist, given your experience of what happens on these campuses and how things go down, what do you think is going to happen next as it relates to Tennessee State University?
Probably the State Board of Education is going to come in and they'll try to make some moves. People politically need to be ready for that and be ready to fight back. But that's the next step, is that the State Board of Education is saying that the college is unstable. I think the least of their concern should be Dr. Glover's exit package. Everybody gets one. I got one. It wasn't $800,000, but whatever. I didn't work for 10 years. But that's customary in higher education, that someone would get an exit package. Focusing on that as opposed to focusing on the ways that the state of Tennessee has systematically underfunded Tennessee State is really what needs to happen. But I do think that the State Board of Education will make some moves. As we know, about a year ago, the governor switched up who was on the state board, taking some people off who were more friendly to TSU and basically stacking it with Republican anti-Black folks. And so TSU alums and others need, and all of us really, need to listen to the clarion call and push back. But it's very likely that there will be some administrative changes depending on who is on the education committee of the legislature. It could go through or not. It is a blow to HBCU land and HBCU focus. It is a blow. But at the same time, we know that we do not roll over and play dead. We fight. We fight. We fight. And there are tens of thousands of TSU alums of both parties who can make a difference. This is going to require activism. This is going to require pushback. And so take that thing from up under me over Congo about paying the former president $800,000. That's not the issue. That is truly not the issue. The system worked there for more than 10 years, and most people have that in their contract. The issue is how the state of Tennessee has been systematically underfunding this university and then standing back. It's like you lit a match, you stand back, oh, how do we get a fire? Well, dude, you lit the match. And they've been lighting the match on Black education ever since we had this state land-grant university that a brilliant sister had lifted up and gotten accreditations that they didn't ever have before.
Hi, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Fanbase is a free to download, free to use, next generation social media platform that allows anyone to have followers and subscribers on the same page. Fanbase was built through investment dollars from equity crowdfunding from the Jobs Act. People just like you help build Fanbase, and we're looking for more people to help build Fanbase. We are currently raising $17 million in a Regulation A crowdfund on Start Engine. We've already crossed $2.1 million, but we're looking to raise more capital from people just like you that deserve the opportunity to invest in early stage startups without having to be accredited investors. So right now, I'd like you to go to startengine.com/fanbase and invest. The minimum to invest is $399. That gets you 60 shares of stock in Fanbase right now, today. And then use Fanbase to connect with friends, grow your audience, and be you without limits.